Boseman is being honored with Black Panther 2, but to remember his legacy, we need to remember when he was dishonored by being caged. And if you live in the United States or most of the world, you know this is the poster for the first Black Panther movie. When Black Panther was released in China by Disney, the marketing group decided to use this poster instead. That poster didn't have Chadwick Boseman's eyes, that didn't have Black Panther's mask, and it was just made to cover up that a black lead actor was in the movie. To explain this, Black Panther only made $105 million in China, which was 7.8% of its $1.3 billion box office. Just to compare that, Ant-Man and the Wasp, which came out the same year as Black Panther, made $168 million in China. And Ant-Man and the Wasp made less than half of what Black Panther made globally at $622 million, meaning 27% of the money came from China. It's not because there are a bunch of Ant-Man fans in China, it's because Chinese moviegoers don't like seeing movies with black leads. Disney knows this, which is why this was the poster for Star Wars in America, but in China, John Boyega was cut from the poster. And Warner Brothers did this also, removing Sharon Brewster from the poster for Dune in China. And this shows studios will betray their own actors to bend over to China with that "I'm Charles Perallo, Wakanda Forever."
Young, gifted, and black. Do we see the poetry here?
Boy, do I have a story for y'all. If you haven't seen Black Panther Wakanda Forever, turn away now. In the movie, the vibranium detector invented by Riri Williams was used by the United States government to steal from Talokan without her knowledge. This isn't fiction, y'all. This is real life. Dwayne McDuffie, the co-founder of Milestone Comics, the co-creator of Static Shock, writer for Justice League animated series Ben 10, the list goes on. He went to the University of Michigan where he studied English and physics. His undergraduate research into the properties of thermocouples was applied to missile guidance systems without his knowledge. Sound familiar? He then stopped his research completely and pursued a writing career. 3 years later, he co-created Damage Control for Marvel. Ain't that some?
Hey. Thank you for joining me here with Conversations with Taz for the Sunday Sit Down. And if you haven't figured it out, tonight we're going to be discussing all things Wakanda Forever. So if you haven't seen it, you don't want any spoilers, like it, come back to it later. If you've seen it and you're ready for it, buckle up. If you haven't seen it and you're okay with spoilers, come on, sit down. Let's start. There are 7 videos regarding Easter eggs that was compiled wonderfully by a lovely creator on TikTok. So we're going to go through each of those videos one by one. Let's start with the first one. Here we go.
Easter eggs and details you might have missed in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. This will be a massive multi-part series, so strap in, get some popcorn and enjoy. Spoiler alert countdown in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. The movie cold opens with Shuri praying to Bast to find a way to save T'Challa, setting up her later anger and disbelief in the ancestral plane because she prayed to it to save T'Challa and it let her down. She's attempting to create a synthetic version of the heart-shaped herb. This does exist in the comics. Killmonger invented it because he couldn't take the regular heart-shaped herb because it was poisoning him. She speaks to her AI, Griot, who actually is in the first movie, voiced by Trevor Noah. But sadly, we find that T'Challa has died from an illness, of course paralleling the real-life passing of Chadwick Boseman, who died of of cancer in the summer of 2020. We find out later that T'Challa had actually been keeping his illness a secret, which is exactly what Chadwick Boseman has done, knowing about his illness as early as 2016 but not telling anyone outside of his core family right up until his passing. It is gut-wrenching how true to reality they kept this element of the story, but it just goes to show how the line between the actors' performances and the characters' emotions were blurred throughout, leading to some of the most heartbreaking performances ever seen in the MCU. We then get the Marvel Studios title card. It changed from that classic red to purple, and instead of shots of the rest of the Avengers, it's shots of just Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther throughout his time in the MCU. They actually used this same montage before the first Black Panther on Disney Plus very soon after his passing, and they used a similar montage for Stan Lee's passing. At the funeral for T'Challa, we see characters dressed in all white, a tradition seen in several African cultures, but also the white garms is similar to what characters wear when they go into the ancestral plane. Shuri holds T'Challa's original helmet as seen in Captain America Civil War, and it was said in the first Black Panther movie that T'Challa designed that one himself. The mural of T'Challa that we see has some Wakandan lettering that translates roughly to "The Panther King forever lives in us." 1 year later, the Dora Milaje are taking out some French military ops, and we meet Aneka. In the comics, Aneka is a captain in the Dora Milaje and usually trains new recruits, eventually defecting and subsequently becoming a Midnight Angel alongside Ayo. The Midnight Angels are essentially an elite unit of the Dora Milaje. Ayo and Aneka especially use it when they go around liberating women from corrupt male chieftains across Wakanda. I noticed that all of the Dora Milaje's weapons are a bit more mechanical and technologically upgraded. Just like M'Baku said, after the death of T'Challa, Shuri buried herself in her science, clearly overcompensating to protect Wakanda where she couldn't protect her brother. While Ayo and Aneka don't get too much screen time in this movie, considering their romantic relationship in the comics, I am willing to bet they were mainly there to set up for the future Wakanda-based spin-off show that Ryan Coogler is producing. When Okoye flies Ramonda back to Wakanda, we get a nice callback to the beginning of the first movie where she says,
"My prince, we are home."
Sadly this time she's not referring to T'Challa. More details to come in part 2.
So that covered the opening. Your thoughts on this clip in the movie?
Well, seeing it and going there, I'm telling you, they did such. The costume designer should win another Oscar for her meticulous work in this movie. And that scene, that first scene alone, those costumes were gorgeous, stunning. Like the accessories weren't too much; they were just enough. The detailing for all the gowns that were all the white gowns and pants and whatever else was made that was there. I mean, it was just stunning. She did such a good job. And to speak to the emotion, I believe we were speaking yesterday, it was just so true to what happened in real life that you could you could still feel the emotion that they were going through, having to make, I won't say having to make this movie, but making this movie. You could still feel them. They were still raw. It's only been 2 years, 2.5 to be exact. They're still feeling it. And you could see it on their faces, especially in the opening scene where you see Okoye just tears just streaming down her face. She was not prepared to be doing this now. And you could see that.
And here's a little nugget that I found out because insomnia. The drums in the opening scene are part of the drums that Chadwick Boseman used to play on set. And the drummer that was up there is a part of the original drummer from the first Black Panther movie.
Nice.
So the emotion was there, the rawness was there, the trueness was there. As we go through this, he does a great job of pointing out some Easter eggs. I didn't get a chance to watch all of the videos because somebody was like, "Hey, he's got this. I know you're going to review it." And they were sending me the videos. There's one particular Easter egg I hope he covers. If not, I'll bring it up and I'll see if anybody else noticed it in the movie, because throughout the movie, for me not to completely lose it, because this was already an emotional week for me, I kind of hyper focused on some stuff for the first time ever watching a Marvel movie, because the first time I just go, you know me, I watch for enjoyment and then I'll rewatch it and kind of try to figure out all the Easter eggs. But this time I was so hyper focused. The tribute to Chadwick Boseman goes deeper than I think any of us really noticed. But let's go on to the next clip with the next Easter egg.
Easter eggs and details you might have missed in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Part 2. Spoiler alert countdown in 3, 2, 1. When Ramonda and Shuri go to the river to talk about T'Challa, Ramonda says that she can feel T'Challa's hand on her shoulder. Now, I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, but it seems very reminiscent of Ryan Coogler's speech at San Diego Comic-Con, how he spoke about T'Challa.
He was excited, and he grabbed my left shoulder with his hand, and he was getting excited as the clip went on and on, longer and longer. He was just squeezing down on my shoulder the whole time. And standing here with y'all right now, listening to that music from all those artists, I promise you I can feel his hand on me right now.
Later, some US operatives go to look for vibranium in the ocean when they are jumped by the warriors of Talokan using some sort of song to hypnotize people and lure them to jumping off the boat. Now, I'm guessing this is based off the myth of the siren, whose songs could lure sea travelers to their death. And in the comics, the Atlanteans do actually have siren offshoots. And then enter Namor. Namor, or Namor, is one of Marvel's very first superheroes alongside the original Human Torch. He is the ruler of Atlantis and son of Atlantean Princess Fen and human Lennon Mackenzie. But that human side carried along a mutant gene, making him a mutant and Atlantean. His mutant ability gave him his winged feet, allowing him to fly super fast, while his Atlantean side gave him super strength, speed, and durability. Yes, allowing him to scrap with some of the stronger characters in Marvel. Instead of Atlantis, he's now the ruler of Talokan, based on Tlalocan, a sort of afterlife in Aztec culture. In fact, they rooted a lot about his character into Mesoamerican, Aztec, and Mayan culture. I mean, taking fictional nations and rooting them in real-world culture worked out very well for Wakanda, so it makes sense here too. His people call him Kukulkan, the feather serpent god, essentially a god that commanded the skies alongside Chuck, the god of the rain. Now, he thinks the vibranium juice is what gave him his mutation, calling himself a mutant, but based on Ms. Marvel and some comics lore, it's more likely that he already had a gene in him that was going to be a mutation, but the vibranium juice kind of activated it, the same way Kamala's bangles activated hers. Now, he's pissed that the Americans have a device that allowed them to track vibranium, and he wants the Wakandans to go to America and kill the scientist that created them, that scientist being Riri Williams, teen genius and attendee of MIT University, the same university that Tony Stark gave a speech at back in Civil War. In the comics, she was referred to as a super genius and has been since childhood, attending MIT at only 15 years old and developing her own Iron Man suit using only a bunch of scraps! Here, she's a 19-year-old girl, only a few years younger than Shuri, and you can already tell that Shuri sees herself in the girl, saying that being a young prodigy isn't all it's cracked up to be. In her warehouse, we see the red and black car that her stepfather designed. In the comics, her stepfather died protecting her from a drive-by shooting. But pay attention to that same red and black color scheme because she actually uses it as inspiration for her Ironheart suit. We also see designs on her board for an arc reactor that Shuri calls Stark Tech, revealing that her life's work was her developing an Iron Man suit. And yes, making an imperfect clunky one and then upgrading to a more sleek red version is both her progression in the comics and similar to Tony Stark's progression both in the comics and in the movies. More details to come in part 3.
Now, here's a connectivity point that I think a lot of people forgot about. Riri is in MIT because of Tony Stark. Tony Stark left her an AI to guide her along the way. Guess who else has been accepted into MIT? The sidekick from Ms. Marvel and MJ from Spider-Man.
I just say this. If they're able to, and I stress the word able to because you know how Sony is still about Spider-Man and all the shenanigans. You know how they are. I'm hoping we get Black Cat. I'm hoping. Fingers crossed. Hope. Fingers crossed. And that they do it right. I'm also hoping, if anything, because what's her name? I think her name is Nick Marina on TikTok. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping, if anything, that they just shoot her a line. Because I think she would be perfect as a certain female Spider-Man that we're all hoping we see soon enough. Not saying any names here. We're not going to spoil it. If you know the comics, you know who I'm talking about.
And here's the thing. A lot of people who... Some of y'all lack empathy. And some of you all that are non-Black don't know what it's like not to see yourself and Chadwick Boseman not only gave us T'Challa, he gave us so many influential and crucial Black characters. And he embodied Black Panther to a level that we needed this public funeral. We needed to be able to properly mourn him, but also, even if Chadwick was still with us to this day, the MCU is already setting up all of their characters to pass the torch. So his torch was going to be passed. Now, before we get into the next one, just canonically, go with me here.
Oh.
Shuri in the comics is a bad motherfucker, okay? She goes crazy because in Talokan, she wiped it. Namor pissed her off to the point where she wiped off the vast majority of his population. He came back and was like, oh shit, she was for real. This Shuri is a force to be reckoned with. Like, she didn't need Queen Ramonda for her to. She was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, okay? Like, I'm glad they toned her down to give us a little bit more depth and more layers, like as Shrek would say, like a parfait. No, I'm sorry, as Donkey would say, as a parfait.
And he said as an onion.
To get through. Yeah, Shrek says an onion. We're gonna stick with the parfait. So I do appreciate that. But in this last clip, pay attention to what we saw Riri wearing in this pad in the last clip, because it's gonna come up later. Let's go to the third clip.
Easter eggs and details you might have missed in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, Part 3. Spoiler alert countdown in 3, 2, 1. They have a sick car chase scene very similar to the one in Busan in the first movie, but they get jumped by Atuma and Namora. Atuma in the comics was Namor's right-hand man that wound up betraying him as a play for power in Atlantis, while Namora was Namor's childhood best friend and they go on several missions together. Side note, no Easter eggs, no details, I just really loved that fight scene when Atuma shoved Okoye into the spear. Ooh, my whole screen felt that. We get two newscasts that appear in this film, and if you read the little chyron at the bottom, one of them saying that Scott Lang's about to start his book tour, something we do actually see in the exclusive San Diego Comic-Con and D23 trailer, and another one referencing some sort of political issue in New Asgard. Agent Ross appears and Shuri calls him her favorite colonizer, just like she did in the first movie. He goes to investigate the attack on the bridge, where he meets his ex-wife, Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. Yes, we last saw her appear in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, recruiting John Walker, and then at the end of Black Widow, recruiting Yelena Belova, to which we now know was her forming the Thunderbolts, a movie that's coming out in 2024. We now know that she is the director of the CIA, reporting to the president, and considering she's forming a team of Thunderbolts, I can only imagine that the new president of the United States in the MCU is Thunderbolt Ross, who will now be played by Harrison Ford in the upcoming Captain America movie. Valentina in the comics is confusing to say the least. She is essentially a triple agent, originally for S.H.I.E.L.D., but then also Hydra, but then also Leviathan. I have many theories as to what's going on with her and her character, but mostly she's just there to set up a future movie, so we'll save that for a separate video. After Shuri and Riri get kidnapped, Ramonda heads to Haiti to find Nakia. But this is a fun detail. Ramonda is originally greeted by a couple of kids, one of them actually being Toussaint, Nakia's child, which actually makes sense. Rather than this being some random kid that runs up to a stranger, this was Toussaint running up to his granny saying, hey, you want to go see mom? I'll take you to her. Like, that's so cute. Can we just see that this boy is 6 years old and he can speak French, Creole, English, and understands Xhosa? Absolute legend. I'm going to talk more about him in the post-credit scene breakdown. More details to come in part 4.
Okay, first of all, I missed that he was the one who took her to his mother. I totally missed that. Like, it totally went over my head until he just said it. I was like,
no, when I first saw it, I was like, why is this kid so comfortable with her? Because it was a look of familiarity. But like I said, I was hyper focused watching this. And I think that's the only reason why I caught it. I think if I was in like regular Taz mode, it would have. So plus there was a point in time I was just lip reading through the movies because my son made me mad, so I took my hearing aid out. For those of y'all that don't know, I go to the movies with my children more often than not. My two sons, they got my love of comics. Okay. So don't in quotation, but they have jokes. They like their hobby is messing with me. So I will take my hearing aid out. So they don't bother me no more. So there's parts of movies where I'm just lip reading.
But I have to say this, like even before that section, because I don't think he discusses it in the first two clips, we get a setup of Queen Ramonda coming into the United Nations, which I'm sorry, that is the most boss way to walk into a situation and own the entire room.
That was a boss. When everybody talk about being a boss babe, you are not a boss babe unless you do that. First of all, we all know that the Dora Milaje are the protectors of the monarchy of Wakanda. When she walked in with men in masks, I was like, what is going on? And then Sister Girl did not have to put headphones on, did not need a translator. Did anybody else catch that?
I saw that.
Because first the United States spoke, then France spoke, and France spoke in French. Now, I speak French, so that I was cool. But I'm like, hold up, wait a minute. She doesn't, because when you go to the United Nations, they do give you headphones, so you have translators. She didn't. And she checked everybody.
Because she was just like, first of all, we have met our obligations, and y'all are sitting here coming up in here trying to take stuff. So our facility was attacked. Then doors open, Dora Milaje walk in, bringing the mercenaries in. And then she gets up, has them following suit. Okoye comes in and says, kneel. I said, okay. And she says, next time we will protect. We still have our protection here. Thank you very much.
Like, don't play me because I'm a woman. Y'all keep looking for a king. Y'all forget the whole job of a king is to protect the queen. The most important piece on a chessboard is what now?
The queen. And baby, listen, I was like, ooh. But then we get because I don't know if he's gonna go into it on the next thing, so I don't want to know. I don't know if I'm gonna talk about it, but we get another scene of now their legends might be in question because it wasn't just their place that got hit with the meteorite. I don't know if he's going to talk about it.
I don't know. Like I said, I wasn't able to watch all of like my goofy behind telling people, oh yeah, we're going to review this. I should have known. I should have known folks were going to flood me with videos, and I was doing my best to go through to see what fits best with how we do things on this show.
Mm-hmm.
So y'all might get more videos throughout the week, because there's still about 30 that I haven't gone through. And shouts out to y'all that found my personal email and started emailing me there, because I forgot I still had it listed publicly on one account, an obscure account that I forgot that I had. But shouts out, I'm impressed. I mean, they weren't using it for like malicious reasons. They're like, I've been emailing her at this ass Taz and she don't get to all of them. Let me jump the line. So shouts out to y'all. Don't do that no more though. Don't do that no more. Let's go to the next clip.
Easter eggs and details you might have missed in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Part 4. Spoiler alert countdown in 3, 2, 1. Down in Talokan, they travel using underwater currents, and yes, I thought of Finding Nemo too. The hand position they make seemingly is based on ancient Mayan artwork. I really love how Shuri is just in awe and appreciation of everything about Talokan, from one royal to another. If it wasn't obvious, there are clear parallels between Shuri and Wakanda and Namor and Talokan. Both of them were thrust into leadership after the death of their loved ones. Both of them are hidden civilizations that are being troubled by the outside world, and as Shuri would later find, both of them are fueled by anger and revenge, which Shuri has to overcome. Nakia rescues Shuri and Riri, but fatally wounding one of the Talokan people, and in an act of vengeance, Namor floods Wakanda, a reference to the iconic moment in the comics where he does the same thing during the Avengers vs. X-Men storyline. I love the way he flies in this movie. He runs on the air because the wings are literally on his ankle, and because they're small fluttering wings, he can actually get a bit more speed and be a bit more agile. But in this attack, he winds up killing Queen Ramonda. She sacrifices herself to save Riri, again drawing parallels between Riri and Shuri, because as as Riri would say later, Ramonda took her in like she was her own. In fact, by her saving the life of this American girl, she fulfills T'Challa and even Killmonger's wish of Wakanda lending help to the outside world. It's why Killmonger even respected her in the ancestral plane, because she saved the life of a girl from the lost tribe. Now that death was a gut punch and a half, but even the way they shot it was very symbolic, because she swims upwards to the light. Now they give Ramonda a similar white clad ceremony that they did with T'Challa, and M'Baku comes to Shuri for counsel. She would reference the first film, asking him why he's not afraid to hear from a child who scoffs at tradition, paraphrasing,
I've been over to see my child who scoffs at tradition.
Now, M'Baku impressed me so much in this film, and I loved his role. T'Challa made M'Baku keep an eye on Shuri during her ascension, and I love that throughout the movie, he is primarily taking care of her emotional journey. Both in the forest and later in the cave, he questions which way her heart leans, because he can see that Shuri is out for blood. But now I hear you asking, why is that important? Why is that such a significant detail to me? Well, when T'Challa had the chance to kill M'Baku, what did he do? He showed mercy. M'Baku, before anyone, understood the impact of what killing Namor would do in the conflict of the war. Why? Because M'Baku is the same. If T'Challa had killed M'Baku in that first movie, the Jabari would have gone wild, just like M'Baku fears from the Talokan people. Yes, he's a warrior that will always fight for his country and his people, but he also understands that the war won't end until both sides stop seeking vengeance and murder. I bloody love him in this film. Loads of more details in part 5.
Can we talk about the fact that M'Baku evolved from the alpha male persona into a better human being? Because he went from me caveman, just beat, just kill, just beat, just kill, to hold up, wait a minute, let's not do this. Because if Shuri would have emulated in this movie what she did in the comics when Namor came and flooded Wakanda, that would have given the colonizers exactly what they wanted. Wakanda and Talokan, they would have been eternally killing each other, distracted from actually protecting their individual countries.
Yep. And that would have made any of the tech, designs, anything up for grabs, because they wouldn't have had enough people to protect them.
And one thing, Little Miss Sister Girl, the anti-hero of all of the MCU, Miss Director of the CIA, she is an anti-hero. Let's face it, to me, she embodies the American conservative GOP. She's in it for the money. Whoever's going to pay her the most is who she's going to show allegiance to.
Isn't she in league with Dr. Doom in the comics?
She's in league with everybody. She bounces around. She's been in league with Hydra. Like, she's been in league with everyone. It's but like she can be sold to the highest, but she is the Mitch McConnell of comics.
But then we get into, if we go by the Falcon and Winter Soldier's reckoning, I can't even believe. I'm still having a hard time trying to believe that basically Carter's niece is a bad guy. I'm still reeling.
Carter wasn't exactly
I know she wasn't a great guy either.
She wasn't exactly a good guy. See, there are a lot of anti-heroes that are intertwined in the MCU, and I think people forget that because you see people either predominantly be bad or predominantly be good, that you kind of forget about the good or the bad that they do. So yeah, like Venom, anti-hero, like does way more bad than good, but does sprinkle some good in there. Like,
I would too if I had a parasite living on my skin.
I mean,
or in it.
My thing is, if you have a wound, you have a parasite for 9 to 10 months. It makes you want to do some crazy things. You get a little murderous. I'm sorry, children. I'm sorry to tell you, but you are a parasite. When you were inside the host parent, and yes, I mean the host parent, you're a parasite. You drain us of everything, and it makes us very cranky. People go, "Oh, it's a beautiful time." No, it's not. They're literally feeding off of me. I need them to stop. Like, nah, bruh, chillax. All right, let's get into this next one. Oh, if you have a Five Below in your area, I don't know if they've sold out in you all's areas, but there are some great Wakanda Forever posters and tees. Unfortunately, they were sold out in my area, but I was able to get this great Hawkeye t-shirt. So if you want some memorabilia, and they have, if you're a collector of action figures, they've got all the Avengers on sale right now. So Five Below, check it out.
Easter eggs and details you might have missed in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Part 5. We're not done yet. Spoiler alert countdown in 3, 2, 1. Shuri uses the Talokan bracelet's trace vibranium minerals to synthesize a new heart-shaped herb, also adding in T'Challa's DNA. And just as a black Brit myself, you know I had to point out that it was Stormzy playing during that montage. Meanwhile, Riri uses Shuri's lab to build her own Ironheart suit, hammering it out the same way Tony would. Shuri actually tells Riri that she gets her science and tech know-how from T'Challa, which yes, in the comics is absolutely true. T'Challa is actually a genius and one of the smartest in Marvel. And that's also when Riri gives the line that she got hers from her late stepfather, thus inspiring the red and black color scheme of her Ironheart suit based on the red and black color scheme of the car that her late stepfather gave her. Okoye recruits Aneka to become a midnight angel. Shuri drinks a cup of Fanta grape and heads to the ancestral plane. Love that she wakes up underwater first, because how the ancestral plane looks is usually based on the user's mind. Actually quite similar to how the afterlife worked in Moon Knight. That whole hospital construct was based on Mark's mind. And funny enough, in that same episode, they do acknowledge the ancestral plane. Shuri will still mentally come into the ancestral plane with anger and vengeance, and so she sees Killmonger. And this is where we realize that he and Shuri have a lot in common. Both of them want power to seek vengeance for their loved one's untimely demise. In fact, look at her. Her ancestral plane is the throne room, the place where her mother died, and when Killmonger went to the ancestral plane, he went to where his father died. And I love that when Shuri blames Killmonger for there not being any more heart-shaped herbs, the entire room sets ablaze, very similar to when Killmonger set the room ablaze of the herbs in the first place. And funny enough, it's a rageful fire that she would later use to almost kill Namor. Regardless, she gets the power and launches the mannequin into the wall, very similar to how T'Challa did in her lab. We see Shuri picking up her helmet, seemingly recreating this comic book panel. The arms have sonic cannons pulled from her weapons from the first movie, as well as white dots across her face, just like her traditional face paint. She drops from the ship into the Jabari cave, very similar to how T'Challa dropped from the ship at the start of the first movie, but also it's a nice poetic reversal of the start of this movie, where T'Challa's body ascended into a ship, the new Black Panther descends onto the world. When she lands in the cave, I love that there's virtually no sound from her impact, because the boots are vibranium, so they absorb the sound. Sound is vibration. Plus, it brings her full circle to one of her earliest designs for T'Challa, the sneakers.
Fully automated, like the old American movie Baba used to watch. And I made them completely sound absorbent. That's what I call them. Sneakers.
They go into battle and Shuri makes light work of a bunch of Talokan soldiers, as do the Dora Milaje using their acrobatic skills, supported by the brute strength of the Jabari holding them up. Teamwork. Riri takes on Namor in her upgraded Ironheart suit, and yet the boosters kind of form a little heart shape behind her. She gets a little face hug just like Tony Stark and uses Griot as her AI, the same way Tony would with Jarvis and with Friday. But while the suit could just about take the pressure of flying before, much like her predecessor, she upgraded from the flaws of her last suit and now can easily jet high and take Namor down. There's even a quick shot of her leg boosters transforming and rocketing her into the air, very similar to Tony in Infinity War. Head to part 6 for even more details.
There's still a conversation to be had about the conversation in the cave, because he asks her which way you're. No, before that. I'm sorry. It's before that. I'm sorry. I'm remembering now. Because it's. I believe it's at the cave when he asks her which way is your mind leaning, and then which way is your heart leaning. Yes.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, see, this is why we get this dichotomy of there's always your mind, the way your mind thinks about something and the way your heart thinks about something. Because the way your heart thinks about something is going to be drastically different than where your mind thinks about it. Because your mind's going to think about it from a logical standpoint. What's the best course of action? How can I do this effectively? Whereas your heart's going to want to take sometimes the long way around. And when she answers him, she's like, well, look, I just buried. My heart is gone at this point. Like, I just buried the last piece of it. It's gone. It's not even here. And I'm just like, sweetie, if you had honestly buried your heart, if you had honestly buried it, you wouldn't be feeling the way you're feeling right now, because the way you're feeling, your heart is really ramped up on, I need to get revenge for this. But that's just my opinion.
I get where she's coming from. And when you bury that last piece of you, people can look at that as if you are going off of emotion from your heart, where you're not. You become stone-hearted. You're going off of, logically, this is what you did. Logically, I cannot stand you for this. And in order for me to feel better, I need you to feel what I feel now. Because that seems to be the only way you're going to learn. Because you keep pushing my buttons when I keep telling you, I am not a computer. Stop trying to touch my keyboard. And with Namor and Shuri, Namor wanted something done, but Namor wanted to stay hidden. He wanted, no different than the colonizers, to use Wakandans to get his revenge. And Shuri is like, leave me alone. I haven't done anything to you. I'm not a part of this fight. Leave me alone. He wants to keep poking to get his way. And she's like, okay, we done kept the colonizers out except for 2. We only like 2 of them. Just 2. And you want to keep poking? All right, I'm going to poke you, but I'm going to poke you with both my hands. Where if she really truly had her heart intact and truly had her heart, I think she would have understood that her and Namor were suffering from the same pain.
Mm-hmm.
And she would have been a little bit more benevolent. But yeah, no. And trust me, the final chapter of my villain origin story happened this week. And yeah.
I'm not saying that, again, I'm not saying that she had to shut off her emotions, because that's exactly what she did. I'm not saying that. Oh, she shut them off. Her limiter was off. It was off all the way. Like, you could see it. Like, especially again with the conversation she was having with M'Baku, her limiter was gone. Like, she did not care. I'm glad we didn't get what we saw in the comics, because baby, listen.
Although in the comics, Shuri consistently dog walks Namor. Like, bruh, I don't know why you keep trying her. You can't win, Chad. What did Michael Jackson say? You can't win. Like,
but I have to say this, in that conversation, you still see that pull and tug of, I'm gonna keep this limiter off, but she's still wanting somebody to pull her back from the precipice. And that's what I got out of that conversation. She still was like, I'm having my limiter off. I'm gonna shut it off, and I'm gonna go into this fight to fight and kill this dude. But it still felt like, to me, she wanted somebody to pull her back from that cliff.
It was, she has an ultimate nemesis. Unfortunately for her, and I know what this feels like, her ultimate nemesis was/is a relative, aka Killmonger. The pullback is, I don't want to become Killmonger. It wasn't that, oh, I want the, like, it wasn't like, oh, her heart was taking over. It was, I don't want to become Killmonger. Because even the most evil person on the planet, there's still one person they don't want to be associated with. And that person could be a lesser evil or greater evil. It's just in their mind, they're like, I might be bad, but I'm not their version of bad.
Because I mean, it's clear that she doesn't even tell Nakia who exactly she saw when she went there.
Because I think in that moment, she remembered how the spirit realm worked. So it's like, you can deny things all day to try to make yourself feel better, but then when you're face to face with certain things, yeah, you can't deny it. Now, before we finish these Easter eggs, let's run into the winter ad, and then we'll be back immediately with 6 and 7. So see y'all in 2 and 2.
Style. Style is the answer to everything. A fresh way to approach a dull or dangerous thing. To do a dangerous thing with style is what I call art.
You spent a lot of time in water in this movie. How long did you have to hold your breath?
You know, I worked very hard for this. A lot longer than she did. I started, 30, 20 seconds, and then I built myself up to close to 4 minutes, 3 minutes and 45 seconds. But this one, she went over 6 minutes.
But my first day I started in 30 seconds, and at the end I'm finished in 6 minutes and a half. So I was like, okay, I'm dead.
I mean, no one came close to her.
Well, it's not better than Kate Winslet. She has the record.
From Avatar?
Yes.
Kate Winslet held her breath for 7 minutes. Like, that is...
R.I.P. Kate Winslet.
Yeah.
Easter eggs and details you might have missed in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Part 6. Spoiler alert countdown in 3, 2, 1. They use extreme heat to dehydrate Namor, weakening him the same way Shuri did in the comics, allowing her to 1v1 him. Now, one detail I love about this final conflict is that for as much as Shuri got a power boost being the new Black Panther, she does not actually use power to defeat him. She uses brains over brawn. And if you think about T'Challa's fights with M'Baku and Killmonger, that's how he won too. It was using brain over brawn. David and Goliath.
Gotta be the best, and yes, with the flyers like David and Goliath, I conquered the giant.
They crash land in the desert and have a similarly heated duel as they do in the comics. And this detail I found especially poetic. Shuri, again using her wits, rips off his wings. Guys, she rips off his Achilles heel. She still gets battered, her vibranium suit takes the punches, and even after dispersing the vibranium like T'Challa, it still has no effect on Namor. And Shuri gets impaled, but she ain't done. Just like T'Challa in his fight with M'Baku, she takes that spear and keeps on pushing. Leaps in front of Namor, and in the Yucatan Mayan language, he yells Imperious Rex, which is his catchphrase from the comics. It basically means like, to war, or let's do this. But then Shuri hits him back with a simple Wakanda Forever, activating the engine behind him, burning him alive, just like the fire that she sees in the ancestral plane. Like I said, brain over brawn. She intends to go for the killing blow, but in the perfect parallel to the fight between M'Baku and T'Challa, Ramonda comes to Shuri and tells her, and much like her brother in that moment, verbatim, she yells, yield. As with both M'Baku and Namor, their people needed their protector. T'Challa spared M'Baku for the sake of the Jabari tribe, and Shuri did the same to Namor for the sake of the Talokan people, remembering through a beautiful montage that they're not so different. In both cases, when Shuri and T'Challa showed their opponents and their mother who they are, they showed that they were empathetic and merciful leaders. This film is so good! More details in part 7.
And I love the reference to Hermes and Achilles with Namor.
Well, I know we got the Achilles reference. I know Hermes has winged feet. Okay, now I'm seeing it. Okay, thanks. Never mind. Keep going. Keep going.
Oh,
I'm good.
That was go ahead. That was my statement. That was my opening statement.
So before I continue, I'm only showing this because my cousin still hates me to this day for having this, and she will continue to do so. She may even come up and steal it when she comes to see me.
That's what we're doing now.
Girl, I got the movie. I'm just saying.
I'll go back to sleep.
See, you woke him up. But my thing is we always go back to this brains over brawn shenanigans. And I'm just like, it works. It does work here, people. Come on. I mean, how do you think these levers were involved? How do you think, pulley systems work? It's brains over brawn. It's a way to get the work done without killing yourself. How do you think those pyramids evolved? It's called levers and pulleys, baby. I hate to break it to you. These were not aliens. They did not come down and give us, no. Levers and pulleys.
Not only that, what I really love about the MCU is that historically, no country on this planet has truly been able to protect itself, especially the countries that consider themselves superpowers. The United States, in real life and in the MCEU and the MCU, is extremely vulnerable, extremely susceptible. So is all these other superpowers, as we see every time we have to go to the UN, et cetera, because they use brawn over brains. Wakanda and Talokan have protected themselves because they've used brains over brawn. They're not trying to go to war with everybody. They're not sticking their nose in every other government's business. They're like, okay, you do what you want to do with your people over there. I'm going to stay over here, because they're thinking logically. And when you think logically and you use brains over brawn, you can survive a lot. And for those of y'all that love to be in my comment section, like, hey, you don't have to, why don't you do this? Why don't you address that? Brains over brawn, baby. I don't have to fight everybody. A lot of times I can just let people fight themselves. That's all you get to do. Now for the final part of the Easter egg, and then we're going to get into good old Soups and his takes on Wakanda Forever. So here we go.
Easter eggs and details you might have missed in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Part 7. Spoiler alert countdown in 3, 2, 1. Riri heads back to MIT with no Ironheart suit but a fully fixed car, and it took me literally 3 rewatches to realize this, but the orange outfit that Riri wears in that final scene is actually Shuri's outfit. She wears it earlier in the lab at the start of the movie because they're like sisters and best friends now. It's really sweet. Okoye busts out Agent Ross, presumably taking him back to Wakanda to their little token white boy farm. M'Baku descends on warrior fools from a ship the same way T'Challa did, challenging for the throne but saying that the Black Panther could not attend, implying that yes, M'Baku is going to be the new king of Wakanda while Shuri takes care of things as Black Panther. I personally love this. M'Baku proved himself in this film that he is not only wise, but he's empathetic and he really understands how to take care of his people. He knows what it means to be a good king. And it ends with Shuri going to Haiti to burn her ceremonial robes and finally say goodbye to T'Challa. This scene broke my heart. You can really see Letitia's real heart come through in this moment, where you couldn't tell if this is Shuri or Letitia Letitia grieving. It was both. I've seen a lot of Letitia Wright films, and this is definitely one of her best performances. Of course, that brings us to the post-credit scene, which I've already broken down in a separate video. But the only Easter egg I'll throw in here is that Nakia's son is named Toussaint. Toussaint is named after Toussaint Louverture, a Haitian general that was the prime leader of the emancipation of Saint Domingue that would become Haiti. If you got this far into this string of videos, thank you and welcome to my page. Welcome to Theories by T. If you already follow me, hi, you guys usually get here, so what's up? My longtime followers know I always do this with movies that I love, especially big Marvel movies. My interviews with the cast of these movies will feature in the MTV Movies Black Panther Wakanda Forever special on Monday the 14th of November. If you're watching this after that date, then go, it's already out, go watch it! As a huge fan of Marvel, Chadwick Boseman, the character of Black Panther, and just representation and diversity in film in general, this one really meant a lot to me. On a personal level, this film was just special and a perfect conclusion to Phase 4, a phase that has been primarily all about grief and moving forward. Follow if you're new here, check me out on all my other platforms at Theories by T. I've been T, and people, that's the T. Wakanda Forever.
Now, before we get into and break it down, please make sure you go and give that creator a follow on as many platforms as you have. Please, 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 and thank you. Now, the one Easter egg that I was talking about that I didn't see him bring up is when Okoye in her new blue suit goes to rescue our favorite colonizer. They scan into the license plate. The license plate has Chadwick Boseman's initials and his birth date.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Nice.
And Riri's orange outfit, minus the white cover-up, is the outfit that Shuri had on at the opening of the movie. It shows that they have become a sisterhood. They've become sisters, that they can now borrow from each other.
Oh. Sorry, I don't know what happened. It just froze, or I froze, so I had to go out and come back in.
No worries.
So I was just like, okay, let me just go out and come back in, and then we'll go from there. But like I said, we were having this discussion earlier on in the year, and I said it just seemed awkward that in the movies, not the comics, that she just was not visible, like even at all. And I was just like, well, where's Nakia? She should be out here fighting too, because Okoye is here. Where's she at? I didn't think, as we all didn't, we wouldn't be in the situation we are in now, because Chadwick's not here, and T'Challa has been solidified as passing on in this particular movie phase at this point. And so basically that plan just followed into the movie, be like, yep, we're just gonna have you in the back over here, just out for a few minutes. And I just love the fact that and I don't know if we'll get a deleted credit scene or deleted scene when the movie comes out on Blu-ray, about a conversation maybe that may have been had between the Queen, her, and their son. I don't know. I'm hopeful. Maybe it ended up on the cutting room floor. I don't know. We don't know. We weren't there. I'm hopeful. But it just shows that this movie was honestly all about loss and how you handle it. And what will you do when your back's up against the wall and you need to pick I won't say pick a side, but pick a way through that's not going to, cut your nose off to spite your face. And,
I also think it speaks a lot to honoring the final wishes of someone.
Definitely. Totally agree on that.
I've noticed on a lot of social media platforms, people are like, well, why weren't all of the Avengers there for his funeral like they were for Tony Stark? First of all, Tony Stark was a regular, schmegular citizen. Y'all got a chance this year to watch the funeral of a monarch. It's a whole lot different than a regular person. And
Yep.
different cultures handle things differently. And for Wakanda to not just willy-nilly allow people to cross their borders, Avengers or not, do y'all really think that Wakanda was going to open its borders for all of the Avengers to be in one place?
Nope.
In one place.
Nope.
Which would put Wakanda where the world is already trying to take their vibranium. That would open them up for an extreme attack. Because people are going to be vulnerable. These people wouldn't have came with their suits, their weapons, no nothing, trying to be respectful of the memory. And it was already explained that T'Challa had separate conversations with people telling his wishes for how things were to be handled. It was mirroring the life of Chadwick Boseman, where he, it's been said, reached out to people and was like, this is how I want things to go. But
And
I'm like, y'all gotta, and like, come on. T'Challa was royalty. Iron Man was a narcissistic serial killer that just figured out a legal way to kill people. He was really a villain that found a way to become a co-leader of some heroes. Let's be real. Nothing about Tony Stark said hero. No, everything said villain. Even before he became Iron Man. Villain, he was all about murking people.
I'm not saying anything. I'm just laughing.
And my own personal private theory about why everybody showed up to Tony's funeral was to make sure that motherfucker was dead. Because he done technically died so many times. I think everybody just showed up like, are we for real this time? And he for real dead? Oh, you got that's out of his chest.
I mean, I see that. I say this within regards to that. Like you said, I believe he had conversations with them, be like, look, I need you to be vigilant because I don't know if something may happen. If it does, I need y'all to at least be on alert. Don't show up, but just be on alert because my people are going to be grieving. And you may need to keep people out while we're trying to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do that, I would greatly appreciate it.
Because I think people forget that T'Challa was swept up in the blip for 5 years. By the time he came back, according to this timeline from Wakanda Forever, he had less than a year to prepare people for his death, meet his son, prepare his son for his death. So whatever happened in the blip, according to this timeline, is what killed T'Challa.
Because if you look at it, it's just like, because again, we can't account for the 5 years if Nakia and her son were safely in where they were, and if they were again safe from what.
Well, we know Nakia left, but in the first Black Panther, it was kind of set up that she needed to leave to save her heart. She didn't want to be the queen. We know that she was very adamant about it. So we knew that she was going to go away and take some time for herself. We didn't know the underlying reason why she was going. And T'Challa was like, okay, baby, I understand. Was because she was already knocking it up. But he knew she did not want to be queen. But she had no problem bearing the next heir. Because she still wanted her freedom, which I can understand. Because even though I done seen some mighty fine kings and princes out there, your girl ain't built to be a queen or a princess. I would be done broke every rule.
Because here's the funny thing, because my mom didn't even realize it. I was just like, yeah, mom. Yeah, it happened. That's how the son got here. Just like how I got here. Just like how my sister got here.
And Lupita, whatever you did, girl, you done got thick, girl. Go Lupita. Go Lupita. I see them curves, girl. I see them. Mm-hmm.
And, it's just speaking to how, again, if you don't deal with your losses, because if you look at it, it's been a compound loss for her twice with her brother. Because if you look at it, she lost her father 1 year, a couple, maybe year and a half. You know, we have this whole Eric shenanigans. Then we go into Infinity War, and her brother disappears for 5 years.
Well, not only that, let us not forget that when the father died, it took a couple hours for the news to get back to Wakanda that T'Challa survived, because that was an explosion. So technically she went through it 3 times, because it's like, did my brother survive? Then you find out your brother survived. Then he's blipped off the planet. Then he comes back.
Only to turn around a year, almost a year and a half later, he's passing. So that's a compound loss that she's had to face. Not saying her mother didn't face it too while she was here, because I'm pretty sure her mother did face it too. But I'm just like, then.
But you face it in a different way, because those are 2 of your protectors. Her mother lost a protector and a child, which is a different type of grief, a different type of outlook. And I've always been open about my personal story. For a few years in a row, a year to the date in February, I lost my protectors. I lost my elders. I lost my paternal grandfather, then my maternal grandfather, then my mother, a year and a day apart for several years. It hits you different, because that anniversary comes up and you're mourning, and then you're like, damn, can you pick a different month? Can you pick a different set of circumstances? Like, this is all traumatic. Like, Jesus, come on. But Mr. Soups, Mr. MCU review. Let's dive into the non-BIPOC look at stuff. And I know you're gonna look at Soups and go, but Taz, he looks a little BIPOC. You'll understand. Because sometimes, if you ain't black, you need to not try to critique black stuff, because you're not gonna get the nuance. I don't know. Let's take a look.
Let's talk about how the ending of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever set up the future. This video will contain spoilers for Wakanda Forever, so if you haven't seen the movie, save this video and come back to it later. So based on the way this movie ended, there are 2 massive things it really set up. The first is the rest of the world waging war against Wakanda for their technology and resources. This was the entire point of the Everett Ross Valentina storyline. Valentina has essentially been the Nick Fury of Phase 4, making multiple appearances, and she's gonna make more in Phase 5, with it all leading to the Thunderbolts. With her working for the government too, I wouldn't be surprised if we see her in Captain America: A New World Order. Ryan Coogler and Kevin Feige have already pitched ideas for Black Panther 3, so the war against Wakanda is coming pretty fast. Now the second big thing they set up was T'Challa's son, who's also named T'Challa. This is essentially Marvel's way of recasting T'Challa, as a new actor will take his place once this child grows up. And it'll of course build up to him becoming Black Panther, with Marvel continuing to tell T'Challa stories. Okay, we need to break this down from Wakanda Forever, because I truly believe it's one of the most beautiful character arcs a character has had in a Marvel movie. So I see that everyone's been praising Namor, and rightfully so, but for me, it was Shuri's development that really brought this movie together. This is your spoiler warning for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. So in the first Black Panther movie, we know that Shuri is someone who's more reliant on tech than spirituality. M'Baku even says that she's a child who scoffs at tradition. Now Wakanda Forever opens up with Shuri praying because she's finally dealing with a situation where her technology can't save the day. Then a 1-year time jump takes place after T'Challa's funeral, and what we learn is that Shuri has continued to lose herself in her technology. Then Queen Ramonda dies, and from what we know, this is Shuri's second time reaching out to the ancestors, but they're still not there for her, which is why she meets Killmonger in the ancestral plane. It's only until when Shuri's about to kill Namor that Ramonda reaches out and tells Shuri, "Show him who you are." Shuri and Namor are 2 very broken people, but in a way this moment put her back together. That's why the movie ends with a beautiful scene of Shuri embracing her tradition, because she knows that the ancestors are finally with her.
There's more. I'm taking a break here because, bruh, you got that wrong. The ancestors did not give up on her, and she reached into her technology because she's a logical person. So she goes to what she can understand. She cannot understand the spiritual realm. She cannot understand the spiritual side of things because spirituality is not logical. And the ancestors didn't finally come through for her. The ancestors were there for her from the beginning, because everything isn't going to be pleasant and be appeasing to us in the spiritual realm, because the spiritual realm gives us our biggest and hardest hitting lessons. Hence the term iron sharpens iron. They're not using clay. The spiritual realm, the ancestors are not going to placate to us, to just pat us on the back and give us a participation trophy for still being alive and on this side of the plane. No, their whole thing is to guide us into betterment. And this is why I say sometimes if you ain't about that culture, don't speak on it. Let's go to the next one.
So now that Wakanda Forever is out in theaters, I want to talk about some of my criticisms for the movie. So the internet collectively lost its mind where I posted this tweet where I teased that there's a lot that just didn't sit right with me that I can't explain without getting into spoilers. So we're gonna do that now. If you haven't seen Wakanda Forever, go watch it and come back to this video. So I find it pretty hilarious that before, a lot of people were saying that I didn't like this movie because there weren't cameos in it, when one of my biggest problems was this entire subplot with Valentina and Ross. In a movie that's telling a very serious story about overcoming grief, this subplot felt so out of place and it didn't really add anything to the main story or its main characters. Every single time Valentina came on screen, it constantly felt like Marvel reminding us that they're setting up stuff for the future, but I was only invested in what was happening now. Instead of spending time with her, I wish we got to get to know characters like Namora or Atuma, who despite having character posters, had a handful of lines. M'Baku and Nakia had important moments in this movie, but they still felt severely underutilized, and I wish we got to spend more time with them. Now, I think my biggest problem with this movie is its pacing. During some parts of the movie where I felt like the film should have slowed down so like that we can sit with these characters as they're feeling emotions, instead the film sped up because so much stuff was happening. Nakia and Okoye have a beautiful conversation talking about everything that's happened, and then it gets cut short when Namor invades Wakanda. Queen Ramonda, who is one of the best parts of this movie, gets killed, and then it just cuts to the end of her funeral and we continue to go. I think the only time the movie really leans into its emotional element the way it should have was its beautiful ending with Shuri on that beach. Overall, I still really enjoyed this movie and I found it even better on my rewatch. But these were just some of the issues I had with it.
Can I smack him, please?
Once again, Soups, you don't understand things because this movie dealt with grief in real time, because the world doesn't stop when you're grieving. And when you're grieving, it feels like the world is going in fast forward. And what Soups is really missing here is that old girl, our anti-hero, our pseudo villain, the reason why they put her in there is because she is the greatest proponent that all of these attacks, even though over radio frequencies everybody's saying that they're being attacked by blue people, Wakandans are being blamed for this, which sets up the storyline for why our favorite colonizer is arrested, why there's heightened talk about Wakandans. So the next film that comes out, we can have an understanding of what's going on and why ultimately the allyship between Talokan and Wakanda happens. Because if you don't, you're not really going to get the gravity of Shuri having to grieve 2 deaths and still move forward. Queen Ramonda having to grieve death and still move forward. And Wakanda, just like Black people historically, being blamed, Black Lives Matter protest, for the aggression and violence of other people. See, this is why sometimes if you're not Black, you need to stay the fuck out of Black people's business.
I want to say something, but I want to make sure I say it correctly. Here's the thing, my good sir. I understand that you quote unquote may or may not have an honest love for these movies. Hey, that's your decision. I don't care. But here's the thing. You're missing the nuance to actually discuss this film. You're missing the actual problems that we have faced in all terms of our life here in this country and around the world. We don't have the luxury of having time to sit down and slow down. We're constantly having to perform like performing monkeys for you so that you can feel entertained and comfortable, where we feel constantly uncomfortable in the positions that you guys lock us into. Because it seems really funny how you had an issue with the pacing of this movie where do you honestly think your job cares when you lose someone? They really don't. Oh, they'll give you the condolence card and they'll say, "Oh, we're so sorry for your
They
loss."
don't care when they lose you.
I'm really telling
find
you,
that
sir.
you ain't coming back, they've replaced you.
And I'm just like, you're replaceable at this point. And that's what this movie is trying to get you to see, is that at any point in time we stop doing something, they're already on the next, they're on to the next.
Well, not only that, a lot of these Marvel bros and DC bros forget one pinnacle thing about comic books. Comic books are a commentary on what's going on currently, on society.
Yeah.
Like, you want us to completely erase the nuance, erase the commentary to make you feel better. But let's go on to the next one because he's just spicy.
The reason this scene left such a bad taste in my mouth is because this is a moment that actually happened. Chadwick Boseman actually died and passed away. And the idea that Marvel recreated Chadwick's death for the sake of a fictional story just...
I'm not gonna lie, your take and that perspective almost had me until I remembered that Ryan Coogler involved his wife and his family while creating this script. Basically greenlighting the scenes and making sure everything is respectful and appropriate. So it's interesting that you'd be offended by something that was carefully made with thoughtfulness and respect and love by the people that knew him the best and actually had relationships with. If his loved ones and close friends thought this was the best way to honor him, then we're just going to have to run with that and respect that and trust it. But yeah, it was beautiful. I think if you had gone into this movie with a different lens, I think it would have made your experience a lot better, and you wouldn't have pissed off the internet.
Let's break down the post-credit scene for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. This is your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen the movie, go watch it and come back to this video. So in this post-credit scene, we meet T'Challa's son, who's also named T'Challa. Now, of course, he will grow up and become Black Panther at some point. This is essentially Marvel's way of recasting T'Challa, and I totally respect it. Going into Wakanda Forever, there was so much controversy surrounding recasting T'Challa because the character is just too important. Now, at the same time, you could also empathize with the cast and crew because they love Chadwick like a brother, and no one could have been able to step in and fill his shoes. But now this version of T'Challa is a completely different person, and he's gonna be different in his own way. This person said, does T'Challa's son still get his mutant powers in the MCU? In the comics, T'Challa has a son named Dazari, and he does have mutant powers. But that's because he's the son of T'Challa and Storm, so once little T'Challa grows up, we could still see this relationship in the MCU. It all just kind of depends on how young Storm is right now. So T'Challa will eventually return and a new actor will step in to take his place.
I'm not gonna lie, Soups' Wakanda Forever criticism explanations are not only hilarious, but it goes to show you that media literacy is really lost on some of you. So the internet exploded because... No, bro. You put out a whole status saying if there wasn't a training montage for Shuri, spoiler alert, you weren't gonna like the movie. And there is no training montage for Shuri because she doesn't need one. And you walked out saying it's a step down. Please be fucking for real. Acting like we don't fucking know you. You said one of the things I didn't like was this subplot. It didn't add anything to the story. I feel like the first Black Panther movie was Wakanda opening itself up to the rest of the world. So it's natural to see how other countries like the US are gonna react to Wakanda. It's not about cameos. It's just that I wanted cameos because of these posters. Like, bro, this is still a cameo. I'd say M'Baku and Nakia. Like, the first two are like, okay, sure. But you're really trying to say Nakia didn't have a big role, even though she's the one who saves Shuri, even though we have whole moments figuring out where she was during the stab. M'Baku has some of the most important lines in the entire movie. Shuri's entire final mindset, Shuri's realization about her people and being a leader, where do you think that came from? You didn't put this in your TikTok, but I just find you so entertaining that somebody can be this unintelligent. And you said, I didn't like the ending when Shuri and Namor are working together because it was anticlimactic. Please. Please be fucking for real. What's funny is you're like, I wish the movie would have slowed down, as if you would have been able to keep up with the plot of a 3-hour, 30-minute movie. Spoilers, Queen Ramonda gets killed. No, she doesn't. The movie literally tells you she sacrificed herself. Killmonger tells you, specifically, directly, how dare you try to take that away from her. Acting like you care about women characters getting killed off, please. You even tried to say it was problematic that they addressed Chadwick's death. I just don't think we need to show what happened to Chadwick. We know. They should have just moved right on. They shouldn't have made a whole movie in tribute to someone. Because when grief happens, especially to your brother or someone you know, you just move on and it never, you never address it. Good God, man. It's a good thing you don't make movies.
Yeah, because Soup started out so problematic, and that's why I chose the videos that I did, because you can see after he got backlash, he tried to walk it back like, oh, well, this moved too fast. We should have taken more time to grieve Chadwick, but it's bad that we grieve Chadwick. Soups, you didn't understand what was going on because you're not Black. You didn't get it. And I'm happy for you that obviously you have not lost someone that you've been super close to. So I'm happy for you that you have yet to experience that grief. Because when you're going through that grief, one day you wake up and you find your new normal and you realize how quickly the world has been moving around you, while it feels like you're in slow motion, just trying to find your new normal and keep up with your schedule, because you get one day to mourn them at a funeral. And when you go to sleep and wake up, the whole world, including people who were there while you were mourning at a memorial service, expect you to get up, forget about it, and move on like nothing happened. They want you to jump back up and get back into that schedule. And a lot of times they will act as if you weren't as close to that person as you were, and will look at you crazy like, well, why are you still grieving?
Okay, I have a story for that. So in 2014, my father passed. We were not expecting that. We were expecting him to come out of his situation. And we were just expecting things to go in a different way. It did not go that way. And what I find my family members, especially after the funeral, it just was weird, because I had them, just be completely and utterly disrespectful to not only my mother, but me and my sister and my brother. And we were just like, you go into that phase and you're just like, huh? And it got so bad that we had to basically, that weekend one of my mother's friends just was like, you know what? Just go for this weekend here. Here's a voucher. I have it. Just go use it. You just get out of here for at least a weekend, so you guys can just not be surrounded by people. And we went, where were we? I think it was like Stanford, where I am, and which is like 1 hour away from New York City. So we did go to New York and just kind of decompress, but still situation was still there. And what really irritated me about the whole thing is that I took 1 week off from work, which, they weren't happy about, but it was what it was. And when I got back, I was doing something, and then somebody said something to me, and I had to look at them, and I'm just like, excuse me? And they're like, well, what's your problem? I was just like, I'm in a parallel universe. I'm in a parallel universe. I'm fully in a parallel universe. And she was just like, well, you need to fix your attitude. And I was just like, Jesus, Lord, if I go off on this woman right now, everything in this place is going to be busted up. Everything. And then my boss pulled me in. He was like, "Is everything okay?" I was like, "Look, I just lost my father. It's been a very, very, very disheartening past couple of days. So excuse me if I am not Sister Sunshine right now." And he was just like, "I get it." I was just like, I don't think y'all do. I really don't. And I'm like, I get that, you know, you guys want me to be here and be my old self, but that's not going to happen. That old me is no longer coming back. I'm sorry to tell you. It does not exist. This is my new normal. Now, will I eventually not feel like every time I see something, or every time I hear his name mentioned, that I won't completely and utterly break down? Yes, I'll get there. But right now, I'm sorry, it's not up for debate. This is what's going to be my new normal for right now. And if that offends you or makes you uncomfortable, excuse me, I'm sorry. And it just seems so weird. And you know, I that's why I say with this movie, and why me and my mom were so emotional coming out of it, we understood exactly where Shuri was coming from. Like, it did not dawn on us what was going on. Like, we knew. And we knew. I was like, okay, I get it. I get it. And why the music was so, like, my mom said she had to walk out of there because she was starting to go into that emotional mode that she was in 2014, where we all were in 2014. And it was just like, I don't get you, sir. I'm just like, people do not. I'm like, here's the thing. We are allowed two emotions: happiness and happiness. That's all that anybody who is not a black person, or basically anybody who's not a black person, those are the only two emotions you allow black people to have. You don't give us any other range or form to be anything else. That's it. Because anything else is perceived as an attack. Anything is seen as that you're not working hard enough. Anything is seen that you should do more, or why aren't you doing this, or why aren't you doing that. Any of the other emotions that are given to other people and you're giving grace for, we don't have that option. So the fact that you would come out of your mouth and say that this needed to be slower, or this needed to be faster. The world does not revolve around people who are losing. And I'm not saying that it's not true for anybody who's lost anything. Yes, we all go into that pathetic, quiet, crazy puddle, and we live there for a good couple of months, years, or whatever. And it takes some time to crawl out of that puddle. But for black people, it's even harder because we're forced to go back into being ourselves when we're not ourselves.
And then he adds insult to injury, because I'm sorry, when you're calling for a black woman to have to go through a training montage in order for you to take her seriously, first of all, you all hyper masculinize and hypersexualize us all the time. You act as if we are the scariest creature on the planet when it's your white counterparts that are the most dangerous creatures on the planet. So what training do we have to do? What you have to realize is, as black women, it doesn't matter how many male cousins we have, our father being there, how many uncles we have, how many brothers we have. We are conditioned to let nothing hurt us and nothing take us down. We are the first and ultimate warriors of the family. So y'all always looking at the men in a situation. They're not the scary ones. They're not the ones you have to look out for. They're not the ones that are going to take you down. But let's play these last two videos, and then we'll give our final thoughts.
The movie should have been called Black Panther Exposition Forever, because oh boy do they talk.
Black Adam's down the hallway, my guy. If you're looking for nonsensical, over-the-top CGI action, that's 100% more your speed. I'm even willing to admit that it can be slow and sometimes choppy at points, but everything they did in the exposition was to flesh out the characters. And frankly, I think they could have done more of it. We barely got M'Baku's story. They were in Talokan for all of 5 minutes. And those 5 minutes of non-stop talking had more of an impact on the film than the 2+ hours that Black Adam had. It showed the connection between Shuri and Namor and how they can both see each other's sides while also being in opposition with each other. And then that little snapshot of exposition is then brought full circle in the final battle. But no, my dude wants to see them ride the whales a little bit more, as if the final battle wasn't long enough. Superior storytelling. We need more of it, not less.
Here's a detail from Wakanda Forever that you may have missed. This is Autumn Cheyenne Gerald Arcapal, the female Filipino-American cinematographer behind Wakanda Forever. She graduated from AFI and also has a degree in art history. The cinematography is epic in scope, vibrant, and just incredibly vulnerable while navigating through an emotional film like this one. And to be honest, I think this is one of the best looking Marvel films. She also had a couple of incredible long takes that's not only a technical achievement, but helped to elevate those emotionally heavier scenes or those suspenseful moments. Like that heartbreaking opening sequence when Shuri was trying to save T'Challa. I immediately noticed that the camera was not cutting. But those one takes aren't surprising knowing that she worked on Loki, which also had an incredible one take. And yeah, while I have my issues with Loki, like, the show looked really good. And she also mentioned how There Will Be Blood is one of her biggest influences on her work, which also has an incredible one take. But definitely go check out her online portfolio because she's worked on Loki, Mainstream, Teen Spirit. She's also worked on commercials and done music videos with artists like The Weeknd and SZA. And you can also follow her on Instagram. But yeah, Filipino representation behind the camera, like,
Come on now. Y'all didn't think I was going to have a show and not bring y'all some living, breathing history. Y'all know me better than that by now.
It just really baffles me how people want to, and I'm just like, I get that, you want certain things. Totally understand. I get it. But 1, this isn't your vision. 2, this isn't your story. And 3, you aren't paying for this. Well, you are to watch the movie, but you're not paying to make this. You're not paying to do the script. You're not paying to proofread it. You're not paying to have it go through 3 authorizations, because trust and believe, the United States government, the Disney Corporation, and Marvel have to all sign off on this thing before they can even start rolling. Everybody has to have that check. So the fact that you're sitting here, the fact that the U.S. government literally allowed most of this is still shocking. But we'll get to that in another video.
It's military. It's milaganda, military propaganda. So yeah, of course they're going to want it. But
and I'm just like, you can't. Okay, I'm gonna say this, and this is a sidebar to this conversation. We have projects that are made from source material that don't even follow the source material, like at all. Like it's only the source material in name only. That's it. This has tried to, at least in its own way, meld the source material and another person's mind or directive into one cohesive vision. Please get off your high horse and just appreciate how they're trying to interpret and tell the story, because it's just you're becoming white noise out here in these streets. You're literally becoming white noise, and it's not helpful.
And here's the thing. I appreciate anybody who became a Marvel fan because of the movies, but you have to realize there's canon that exists. Comic books exist, and you are not an expert on all things Marvel because you watched a handful of movies. No, I'm not trying to gatekeep. I'm not trying to sound like the Marvel bros or the misogynistic nerd guys that are out there. But you have to take all of these things into account. Just like I can, let's just say, for the sake of conversation, the whole Harry Potter series through and through, because you have the actual Harry Potter movies and then the offshoots. Let's just say you never read the books. That's fine. But you realize and respect, you can't sit there and go and be so hypercritical of these movies going, oh, this should have been this way and this should have been that way if you never read the books. Because you don't know the where the story is supposed to go or how it's supposed to go if you don't know the canon. And a lot of you all are missing the canon. Yes, the MCEU does take poetic license. Like everything in Hollywood, poetic license is going to be taken, but you have to have an origin to start from. You can have your interpretation of a lot of things, but you have to have a point to start from. Just like vampire lore, you have Bram Stoker as a starting point. You start from that basis and you branch out a little bit more than I would like because of his hard-headed bullshit ass grandson, but I digress. We'll come to that on another day. But you still have a point to start from, and everybody understands and respects that's the part that you start from. Y'all forget with all of these superhero movies, this is not somebody sitting down at the computer and just off the top of their head creating a brand new superhero to bring out to you. Like a bunch of y'all really think in your mind that Iron Man is huge in the comics. No, he's not. He's huge in the movies. Iron Man gained popularity until we put him on screen.
Mind you, he has his own comic, but even then, it's not to the same level as the
It's
rest
not
of
one
them.
of the most. It wasn't the most popular when it came out. His popularity is because of the movies. But final thoughts.
My final thought, I'm going to honestly say, if you're going to this movie, if you watch this review, I'm sorry, and you haven't seen it.
Oh no, I warned them ahead of time that if they haven't seen it, there were spoilers, and if they hadn't seen it and are okay with spoilers, to go ahead and watch. Other than that, they've liked it to save it or favorited it, and they'll come back. So,
I will say this again: if you did not catch the drift, if you're gonna go watch it again and you were not prepared this time, be prepared, because baby, listen. My first words to my cousin when I first finished watching this, I said, "Baby, it was heavy. It was heavy." That was the only honest way I could honestly describe this movie. It was honestly heavy with emotion, and I could not place it any other place. I couldn't say, "Oh, it was a complete cry fest," or "Oh, it was so action packed," or "Oh, it was so funny." It was just an amalgamation of all those emotions just basically smashing together. And I was just like, it's just emotionally heavy. So if you're going back to watch, which I probably may go back to watch a couple of times, just to be petty, I was just like, I need to make sure I'm prepared next time, because I was not expecting to be sitting here crying in the movie. I was like, Jesus. I was like, oh my God. But it's a very good movie. I think they did an excellent job. Best and quickest most public funeral I've been invited to, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
The honoring and the tribute was excellently done. But that's all I got.
I will say the emotion in this movie, to me, was reminiscent to the episode of Rizzoli and Isles after Lee Thompson Young passed away due to suicide. And
I remember that.
Filming could not be stopped. They had to address his death. And you could tell the cast, they were not acting.
Oh,
that was true, raw emotion. And it shows that we're used to our everyday 9 to 5s.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can form great bonds and friendships and relationships. Most times you don't. because even if you work a 12, 14-hour shift, you're not really together during that whole time.
Nope.
But on movie sets, there are bonds that are made because you're away from home. You know, you're put into situations that are different than anything else. And these are individuals that truly created a bond, not just on set, but Chadwick Boseman created a bond with little Black boys and girls across the globe, and with adults. Now, we'll say this, Kenya, my Kenyan cousins, come here, come close. Y'all ought to be ashamed of yourselves, how the fashion that you used to show up to see Wakanda Forever. I saw you. I seen you. That was not the gag. That was not the shame on you. Shame on you. The ancestors are side-eyeing you for that debauchery. But as always, thank you for tuning in. And each one teach one, each one reach one. I will see you all tomorrow.
I went to my email and someone saying my condolences, and I'm like, my condolences for what? I just spoke to you last night about a script. Why are you emailing me that? And coming out of my email to see my my team, my representatives at the time say, do you want to write something about Chad? And I zoned out of that email and I went to my phone, saw all these calls. And I thought to myself, I'm going to make this all go away. This is how I'm going to make this go away. I'm going to call Chad and he's going to answer the phone. So I kept calling. And then I saw Daniel Kaluuya. And Daniel Kaluuya don't call nobody. He busy. I'm like, why is this brother calling me? And I called him and I said, yeah, so you have like 5 seconds to tell me that this is not real. And he was extremely quiet. And I said, you're playing. And he heard me fumbling for my other phone. I heard he had this call, this phone ringing. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm calling Chad. And he said, Tish, the family. And that's when I lost it. So then